Right, hi guys, and welcome to Twisted Dice. Hopefully, this is working. If it isn't, apologies. It will definitely work as a video soon. So, if you're watching this back on YouTube, you should have no problems. If you're watching this live now, we might have some audio issues, but hopefully, we won't. I am Aceface, and I'm here with my good buddy, Simon. Hi, Simon.
I'm all right, my friend. How are you getting on?
I'm really good. I'm really good. So Simon is probably his audio is not necessarily going to be amazing because he's running through the computer. We can't do video. Darren's at work. My technology skills are awful. But thanks for joining us anyway. We've got loads and loads and loads to cover. We're going to talk about all the cool stuff that we've just seen. When you're watching this video on YouTube, I'll add some pictures as well. Maybe we'll see how we go. But yeah, so overall, Simon, how do you feel about what you've just seen?
Absolutely stoked. So people probably know me as Salty Si. I'm going to have to upgrade to Sweetie Si for today, mate. I am absolutely in a happy place.
Yeah, yeah. So overall,
100%.
overall, what would you give it out of a score out of 1 to 10?
Oh man, 10 today. It's 10. It was
10.
knocked out of the park. What a
Well,
video that was.
well.
Amazing video.
So we're going to break it down now. What we'll probably do is, if you want to see like more warts and all, we'll break it down probably more in tip of the spearhead. Um, no, Darren's put still salty Simon.
I
um, but,
disagree. Not
but
today.
not
Not
today.
today.
But we will try and break it down more in tip of the spearhead, and I'm sure that like we'll do more stuff on Twisted Dice as well. So you'll see loads of content coming out as we build into this new edition. But what we wanted to do was a video where we could kind of share a few of our first thoughts and let you know what we thought about it, and maybe bits that potentially you've missed or whatever. I don't know. Anyway, so I've made some notes. Simon's made some notes. So we're going to kind of break it down from the start, and we're going to dip into a few bits and pieces that we've seen and talk about our opinions. So first of all, we saw that trailer. What do you think of the trailer?
That's stunning, wasn't it?
Pretty
I
awesome, right?
It absolutely right from the bat. They hit go, and I've got to say, right, Adam Troke and Eddie Eccles are a brilliant little team. They are and they're really nailing it now. They've got that kind of like me and you kind of feel. They've got that buddy thing going on. They bounce off each other. I thought the bounce throughout was amazing, especially when you were bringing people in. I thought the whole thing was brilliant. But this trailer knocked it out of the park, didn't it? It did for
Yeah, it was
me.
awesome. It was awesome. I mean, I thought the sisters looked really cool, didn't they? Like they looked
Yeah.
epic. Like unmasked, they looked cool. They had the nice balance of gritty, but not like a bunch of blokes.
Right, we're trying to be nice.
No, we're gonna be
So trying to
we're
be
gonna
nice
be
straight off
honest
the
as well.
bat.
We're gonna be
Straight off the
honest.
bat.
But it was good, right? So they look really cool. I thought the sisters looked cool. Like the Primaris Marines, obviously we'll talk a little bit more about it. Looked awesome as well, and Necrons look proper scary, right?
They did, and I think they sort of, we don't want to jump the gun, but they touched on that, didn't they? They wanted to go back to that kind of genre. Like these guys, these undead guys made of metal, are supposed to be absolutely terrifying, and it was pretty awesome. Like you said, I think Adam Trope said it. We often read about the Gauss weapons and everything, but you just saw someone get melted, and it was just like I was like, oh, that is next level. I really really like that, and I like the sister of battle. She had like the glowing arm where she'd obviously like punched him or something.
Yeah,
I didn't quite catch how she got the glowing arm, but she goes in and she has a little prayer and it heals. And I thought it was awesome. It was, what was it, cinematography? Rubbish at saying that word. I'm gonna be like you now. But the whole thing just it felt like the story of where we're going in
yeah,
like a minute, didn't it?
it
And
did.
and I'm an Astra Militarum fan, and I didn't like them cowering at the back, but I did think that was a fight that maybe they should have sat out.
I thought that was a great start. That ticked a box for me straight away to see the Astra Militarum sideline.
Because they didn't have
Uh,
their tanks, right? And we'll get to that,
we will
but
get to
they're
the
coming back.
tanks. We'll get
They
to that.
just, but
Calm, calm
like they said, I am calming my boots. But the whole thing, and then at the end, that big massive thing with, I mean, I was trying to count it, and I took like a little screenshot, and I went back to it whilst I was watching other bits, and he's got like 3 arms. He's got like a big glowing sword. He's got a big massive gun. He's got big sivy fingers.
yeah,
And you were just like, oh man,
yeah,
Necrons are
yeah.
coming back.
Yeah, look super scary, and actually look we and a really nice thought that they actually made Necrons. They put a lot of emphasis into the Necrons, who are an army that they will have known has potentially not had a lot of love since the beginning of fifth, end of fifth, and that
Yeah,
they
I
actually,
think sixth was their zenith, wasn't it? Whenever we went to Flyers, that was their moment in the sun. I think that was 2012.
yeah, it
Now
was
I'm going to go back to that.
it was like literally
2012.
right at the end of fifth, beginning of sixth. It was like literally they brought the Flyers out in fifth, but basically it was a precursor to sixth. So that was really, really cool. And yeah, those units looked awesome. So then they went into started to talk about it. Obviously, there they announced that it was the 9th edition, which is great. New logo. What do you think of the new logo?
I liked it. It kind of modernizes the sort of theme. I mean, the honest point of me, I thought initially it was a little bit too cartoony, but it did grow on me as it went on. With the other, as the videos kind of went on, and then you start to see the sort of, I think they've changed style a little bit. Do you agree? It feels like they've gone a little bit. It's still grimdark, but a little bit brighter, maybe. I don't know.
It looked a little bit like the first edition or the second edition Codex. That it looked almost similar style was that, but the special edition one, that came out looked similar to that.
Yeah. But I like at the start of it. Obviously, like everyone, I'm used to the eagle, aren't I? Everyone knows what Warhammer 40k the symbol is. So by the end of it, I was like, I liked it. I didn't think it was a bad thing. We all know from our corporate worlds that rebranding is sometimes unnecessary. But I think for a new edition, it's nice to get a new feel. So I'm big tick. It didn't make me want to go onto the chat and start shouting at them. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. So they started to introduce then some of the units. So we had a look at the new Space Marine unit. So obviously now Space Marines are going to have chainswords, which is cool, really cool, right? And how cool those models look, yeah?
Yeah. So what I wrote down was at the time, because I was making notes, was chop pistols off Reavers and make my own combat intercessors, because I have all of the Space Wolf sprue upgrades, which have a chainsword on every sprue, and I have lots of sprues of them. And since I'm a Space Wolf player, and since my army is going to be Impulsive Rush, I am, as of tonight, stripping off some guns and putting on some chainswords and pistols.
In preparation.
In preparation. Well, it's a heavy bolt pistol, which is the Reaver pistol. So finally, I have a reason for the Reavers, because I'm not really a fan of them, if I have to be honest. So suddenly now I can have intercessors like that. I am game on. Let's go. I'm making some.
And I put a little quote in, and I put a little question mark. I can't remember the chap's name, but he said, "Really good in combat." That's a quote. That's an official quote. So quite often we've seen things in the past.
Stu Black, the guy that runs it, I think.
Yeah, and that was his exact words. So we will see whether that comes to fruition. I mean, at the moment, Space Marines are no slouches after their recent updates, so it would make sense, but we'll have to wait and see. So, but I think really exciting. And there's more pictures that are leaked. We're not going to talk about stuff that's been leaked, because we always like to stick to stuff that's actually kind of official. But there's more stuff leaked, and these models are looking pretty cool. So Necrons, we saw the new Necron warriors. What's your thoughts on those?
It looks awesome. I'm not going to lie. The one part of Necrons I never liked, and I owned a Necron army back in, we were fifth, maybe it was, yeah. And I had one, and the one bit I hated was the little plastic rods. For me, it just removed a little bit of the grimdark. It made them a little too much like Lego, right? Dead easy thing for me to say. And I never liked it. So I painted mine, and I painted mine purple, and I put little lightning strikes on it to make them look like something different. So what I really like with the new guys is immediately I have a different gun option, and it looks really awesome as well. It's like a kind of a close combat. Hope it's good. But the warriors themselves, did they look like they'd scaled them a bit? I thought they did. They looked a little bit beefier.
But they were slightly more upright as well, which I think was the key. They used to have that kind of almost like half sitting on the toilet, almost a bit like the Orc look, where they're crouched down. It looks like they've kind of upright a little bit. And also when you look at them close up, they're a little bit less uniform. So they've got a bit of like battle damage stroke kind of, and they did mention it close to the end of the preview that they all hadn't necessarily had their reanimation work perfectly. So they've got like a missing eye here and that. So they're definitely, whether they've achieved it in these models, I think I need to see them more, but they pushed the fact and the ultimate. They were saying that they're trying to push them more to kind of a horror kind of genre almost, and making them a bit more scary rather than just this kind of like robotic thing. So
Well, it's what did it say? It's a metal zombie, and I
yeah,
kind of totally got that when I
yeah,
looked at the model. It looked like a metal zombie, that sort of shambling. There's bits hanging out. There's an eye missing. There's, these guys, like you said, there's millions more where these guys came from. They
yeah,
are, if they break, they break. We'll fix them as much as we can, and then like an old microwave, we'll chuck it in the skip and we'll start again. And that's pretty much how it is, isn't it? That's what these guys are. They're not the ultra lords who are going to have the latest updates. The 11.1. They're not. They're going to have version 1, aren't they? And it's going to go as long as it can. They're going to patch them up as much as they can, and then once they get past that point, they'll just melt them down into scrap, one assumes. And I
yeah,
really like that. I
yeah,
like that kind of, because that's kind of like how it always is. I didn't really like it in the fluff, and I hope it represents it in the rules. And we're jumping way ahead of it, but I really hope that it's representative, because it always used to annoy me how hot basic warriors were. They had the same getting up and whatnot as the bigger guys, and I'm perfectly happy for the bigger guys to get up better and the little guys not. But it always used to annoy me a little bit that they just got up like new, and it's like, hang on, I've just blown a hole in you.
yeah.
You can't fix that fast, that quickly. It makes no sense. So I kind of really hope that represents, and these guys start to show it, don't they, with the cables hanging out. And
We
I
do.
thought it was a really good look.
Yeah, well, so they look really cool. And I think before we go on to talk a bit more about rules, is the interesting thing they did say is they said that everything they saw in the video, we were going to get models
You're
for.
gonna
So
you're gonna be able to play, yeah. So
yeah,
we're
so
gonna
this
have a space marine with his dead dude on a shield, which is the best
exactly,
bit of that whole video. That
exactly.
was just absolutely. As soon as I saw that, there was nothing more grimdark than a man with a massive storm shield with a dead skeleton of what I can only assume was one of the veterans, who
Yeah,
is no longer. He couldn't be dreadnoughted like Eddie Eccles said, wasn't it? It was your second promotion. I absolutely laughed my head off at that bit.
yeah,
I thought,
yeah.
yeah,
And he was cool. He looked really cool. But that big old monster at the end looked impressive. Looked like he had both guns and combat,
yeah,
and
that's what I said. He had a big sword. He's got.
yeah,
So you actually look at the video of him. He
yeah,
looks to be on either 4 legs or 3, but either
yeah,
way, he's not on 2.
yeah,
He's got sort of the left hand is like sort of Eddie. Yeah, no, what I was sort of thinking. Yeah, Freddy Krueger-esque kind of big sort of Edward Scissorhands kind of claws, and then
yeah.
he's got 2 hands. He's got 2 arms on the other side at least. What a big green sword. One's got a big gun. This is a big beast, and he towers over those guys. We're talking like, I mean, he must have been not far off knight size. So
He looked huge, and they did comment that they potentially he might not even be the biggest, because they sort of said
no,
there's bigger stuff to come, which sounds crazy, like and obviously we'll talk about it later, but that we talked about the Silent King
yes.
in a previous video, and Necrons look like they're getting so much love, so it sounds like a great time to be a Necron player.
Well, what did they say at that point? That I think Pete Foley then joined, and he said
Yeah,
before all the rules, and he said the Necrons have been doing stuff they shouldn't be doing, and they've dug
yeah,
up and they shouldn't have dug up, which is just
yeah,
the Silent King, isn't it? It's almost like that whole. Do you know what it reminded me of? And we do say sort of they are space Egyptians, right? It
yeah,
reminded me of the Mummy, and
yeah,
they've just dug
yeah,
up, yeah,
yeah, a
Prince
little bit too
Imhotep.
much to
You know what I
hand.
mean?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and
absolutely,
it's
absolutely.
don't read from the book. So
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
read from the book. And
yeah.
there he
So,
is. So
so
I
we
think
went.
that's what happened, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So we went on to they talked a little bit about the new narrative, which I thought was quite cool. So at first, like I'd be brutally honest, what I wrote down as my notes is I wrote stinking filler. But actually, after I gave it a little bit more chance and they talked about it, it does sound quite exciting that they are really spending the time to build the narrative, and the fact that that narrative is current means that there's going to be quite a lot of depth in what they can do with that. So, what did you think about? I mean, I don't know. Have you read a lot of the kind of heresy and stuff like that?
Yeah, yeah. But what I actually wrote down was Mace isn't going to care about this. So
This
there
is
you
true.
go. Yeah. If there's one
we've
thing
got,
you're not over about, it's narrative, right?
we've
And I
had
am.
we've got about 20 or 25 people watching this live, so thank you very much for joining us, guys. If you're watching it back afterwards, then make sure you do jump over to our Facebook page, where we put loads of updates and pictures on there. Thanks so much, people that are watching live. Loads of comments. I won't answer all your comments because trying to kind of keep it decisive as much as possible. And I do have Simon on the call, which means that this could be about 3 hours, and I need to cut this down to under half an hour. So I won't
Half
answer.
an hour. Wow, we got no chance. right? So I'll be brief then, right?
Right.
So
Well,
I've
wait,
rediscovered a lot of.
listen. I'm taking charge here, right? You cut it down.
You asked me the question. I'm going to tell you. You
Well,
asked me what I thought, so I'm going to tell
tell me
you.
what you
So,
think. Tell me what you think.
so I'm sure I'm not alone. I've rediscovered a love of reading again, and to read something I don't know the answer to is going to be really cool. I do love like the heresy books are awesome, but as they said and they alluded to it, you know how it ends. You know
Yeah.
how it ends.
Yeah.
It's the building blocks of our world of our hobby, right? And like the Beast Rises, they were really good books, but you know how it ends. Like, the orcs don't win, right? Otherwise we wouldn't be where we are. So this is now them doing something brand new. When they showed the novel, I thought it was a bit kiddie. That was my honest opinion. I thought, ooh,
Exactly.
not sure I like that. But
Didn't
then when they
like
started talking about it, I thought,
Sandpit.
all right, don't judge a book by its cover, right? And that's immediately, that's what I wrote down. Don't judge a book by its cover. So it didn't look immediately grimdarky to me, but the way they're talking about it, and then they got the guy's name is gone. I didn't write it down. The head guy after the writers, and he was like, we really want to dig into this is going to be a really brutal campaign. You know, you're going to hopefully see, you know, Robo Guilliman struggling a little bit. You've already got some stories of him not really understanding his place in this new world. He doesn't really like what's going on, but he's doing what he's got to do. And I really hope you kind of really dig into that. You're going to see what happens after a man's brought back to life after 10,000 years. I'm hoping he's going to start to get a little bit unhinged. We're going to start to see the Imperium getting a little bit, you know, I really hope they sort of really dig into that kind of where we are. The stress of a man who doesn't really, he wants to be dead. I'm really, and I started to get really excited when he brought in and said we've got the writers' rooms, because whenever they have a writers' room, the books are good. That's what I found. Whenever you bring people together, like the heresy, the books are always good because they're always writing towards an end zone.
Absolutely.
And it keeps them on track and stops them going off doing stupid things that make no sense. Which has happened in a couple of novels. So yeah, I'm really excited for that, to be honest, because I've started reading again, and I'm reading books I've already read. So it'd be nice to read some books that I haven't and I don't know the answer to. So that's what I think about.
Well, we know how it's going to end. Tyranids are going to eat everything. That's how it ends. I'm telling you now.
How'd you eat metal, mate? How'd you eat metal?
They eat anything. We're adapted to eat anything, so it's not a problem. And I did actually put little notes. They did make a little comment around Tyranids, actually. You know, so I think there was a little bit of smiles, and so you know, the eternal optimist is hoping to see some big things from Tyranids coming on. So after that, we talked briefly to Mike Brandt, and that's probably where I'm going to be maybe a little bit more frosty than anything else here. And I'm going to be careful because he sounds like he's now the absolute OG gangster and owner and runner of everything. So seeing I run a tournament, I've got to be really, really careful because, you know, he is clearly, literally running the show. But exciting in a way. So he talked a little bit about unifying missions, right?
Yep.
Which I think is exciting because obviously the closer if we can get to a place where we're all running one mission type, then it makes the community that much closer. And I know that particularly new players and players that are used to playing in one way find it quite difficult to make that kind of leap. So to bring somebody in that has a kind of almost a job of centralizing missions in a theory and in a principle is got to be a good thing, right?
Yeah, and I look, we'll be candid. We play ITC missions. We go to Vegas. We do all that.
Yeah,
and that is a unified mission pack. But it doesn't suit everybody, and we get that. The thing, you know, the thing with Mike is and what he does. So Nova has a different pack, and his pack is different to GW2. So what I would hope is one of the things I would really like to see is that exactly. If I go to Vegas, if I go to Gibraltar, if I go to your event in the UK, if I go to London GT, if I go to Prague, we're all playing the same missions, the same book, because that way it makes managing lists and armies and from a competitive perspective, it makes it easier too, because you can have that weird situation where a unit's not very good in ETC but very good in ITC, and it makes balancing a game really hard. How do you balance a game where a unit's very good on one side but not on another? It doesn't make any sense. So if we can go to one unified thing, I think that's amazing. But we've not managed it yet. We've not managed it yet, and that's my tick. But maybe this time.
Yeah, I mean the worry is that whenever you put a lot of control in one person's hands, you can risk the fact of you're very much kind of putting all your eggs in one basket. Whereas when you've got more people with more control, then you tend to find that you've got more voices entering that field, and
Yeah.
and the thing is, we don't know this. So obviously we've got some kind of idea of what happens behind the scenes, but it's only some idea. We don't see everything, we don't know everything. There's only a few people that actually are that know everything that goes on behind the scenes. So obviously you hear rumors and you worry, and I think, particularly when you're in the competitive circle, and for a lot of people that are in more the narrative and the just the general side of things, this means very little. But for people that are very much in tune with the competitive, and particularly people that are running events, it just rings a few little alarm bells that one person is going to have an awful lot of control around what that piece of the puzzle looks like. So look, there's a reason why they've gone to Mike, and Nova is well renowned for being one of the best events you can go to. So look, let's give Mike a really good chance. I've heard some really, really, really good things. So fingers crossed, like he'll absolutely nail it, and we can see a joined up of that kind of community. I'm definitely, let's give it this 100%, right?
Well, I'll throw something at you, right? Sometimes you need the dictator to drive something forward. Rule by committee can work, but sometimes it can't, and you're not getting it across. What I imagine Mike's going to do is he's not daft. He knows that Vegas is a thing. He knows the ITC is a thing. I would honestly, in a million years, imagine he's been chatting to those guys.
Oh, absolutely.
Well,
they're part
they'll be involved in it.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think sometimes you need someone to be able to say it will be this way and this is the way it's going to be. Otherwise, you'll end up going nowhere. So you do sometimes need that. And look, I run my own event. I don't have anyone else involved. I get to make the decisions, and if it's right, it's right. If it's wrong, it's wrong, and I live and die by them. But you can listen to people's opinions, but then you do need someone to go, right, that's brilliant. Go away. Let me work it out. And I think that sometimes that really helps, because what it does do is you can't please everyone, and you never will. But if you can please 90% of people, then you've done a better job than it splitting again. And I've long been frustrated by the fact that if you go to a different event and you have to look at what the mission pack is and go, God, we're playing that one. Oh, right now I don't even know if my army works in that. I think it just winds me up. So if we can go to, this is a mission pack, this is how it is, but you're always going to get some egos out there who want to have their own thing. I get that.
Yeah.
But if 90% of the events I go to are all from the same mission pack and it all works, then I don't have to redesign my army every single blinking time. That it just makes my life much easier. So yeah, bring it on.
Absolutely, good stuff. So, and then very briefly, and what we'll do is we'll talk about it now rather than later, because it kind of follows on from that. Probably one of the things that I was most excited about from the whole preview was they briefly touched on the new app, which I was like literally jumping for joy, because look, and I put Battlescribe RIP, but and we'll have to wait and see for that. But the chance to bring something to one app is really exciting. I just thought that was amazing, because if we can slowly but surely go towards something more of a subscription kind of model and an update through an app, like it just, to me, that's really exciting. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, we all use Battlescribe at the minute because that's what we've got to use. I don't say all. Some people still use pen and paper for some mad reason. But anyway, you want an app to chuck things in to mess around with. I will say the AOS one, their war builder thing that they've got is really good. When I've used it, I really like it. It brings in all the rules and everything else as well, so you can start to see, especially I remember doing it on my Kara Drone Overlords. It would tell me what the rules were of my Skyport and all that sort of stuff. And if you can start to get that level of interaction, then absolutely going to be brilliant. I thought the same thing as you. I thought, Wolf, that doesn't sound good for Battlescribe, but that's business, right? If they still have a loyal customer base who still uses them and they can adapt to that, then fair play. Competition is king, and you don't always know it's there, and it happens. What I would say is the thing with Battlescribe is it's always been one of those things which for me it's like a bit of an IP thing. It's like, are you guys really allowed to do that? But they've always hidden behind the veil of, we only give the base
stuff
other
to people.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I've always thought, hang about. It's not.
Yeah.
You're kind of hiding behind a wall there, and now at least this legitimizes a list building thing. You no longer get that whole the complaints when somebody gets a list wrong, and it's because of a battle scribe problem, and then it's like you're a cheat, you're a this, you're a that. It just takes that all away. Because if I'm using the GW app, just what GW said, if I got it wrong, it's not my fault.
Absolutely. And it unifies in one place, doesn't it? It unifies in one place, and that's ultimately got to be the key for this.
And I can only assume that they've already thought it through. Because these guys are all involved, they know full well that we mostly all use the same event organizing app, which has a list submission thing in it. And if it doesn't have a port from this to that on it, I'd eat the hat I'm wearing, quite frankly. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
So I think you're going to be able to port it straight from Best Coast Parents, which is now actually prior to this is now merged with Down Under Parents as well. So they've only got bigger. So that's unifying their world as well. If they aren't all interconnected, I'm a monkey's uncle, quite frankly.
We'll see. But yeah, so exciting stuff there. So then we jumped into kind of the meat and potatoes, the bit that probably everybody's waiting for most, which was to give us a bit of a taste of the rules and what the actual changes are going to be. And they did say, like, from the offset, they repeated it several times, that this is an opportunity for them to take what is already the best version of the game. And I think most people are in agreement and that's the case, and improve on the areas where they potentially either missed the boat first time out, or they have had an opportunity to get feedback and to tweak with things that aren't working as well as they were, and then also have an opportunity to bring in new stuff. So that's pretty much the premise of what they're trying to do with this new edition. So from that, they said codexes that are currently in place are fine to use, and that the Psychic Awakening was built around 9th edition. And I think, we spoke about it in the past, that was pretty obvious that was the case, right?
Yeah, I mean, and you can already tell. So they've already gone to this one army, one build model, and that was already relevant in all of the rules that we've been getting. So I would even go as far as to say Space Marine Codex has been built for this next edition, which is not unusual because they brought in the one build model. And okay, they went a little bit crazy and all the rest of these things that variously happened. But I think often, and this is exactly what happened with the Necrons in that 5th edition example you gave, that was a 6th edition codex written for
Absolutely.
5th.
Absolutely.
And it blew that meta apart because it was miles better than everything else. But it was because it was going to work better in the next set of rules. And that's what I think happened with Space Marines, if I'm being honest. I think this 9th edition that's going to overlay over will suddenly start to make a lot more sense. Did you write the 9 down? Because I was jotting down the things that really excited me. So have you got the 9 there? Have you? Do you want to?
I haven't got the 9. No. What I thought I'd like, rather than that, because a lot of it was just a lot of waffle, in the nicest possible way. So I've basically, have you got the whole 9 then?
No. I just wrote down. I wrote down the ones that I really sort of connected with me.
So
as things that I really liked.
Fine. So I've got most of it here. So we'll go through it. So the first thing was around the CPs. So and that very much kind of hits on the whole less soup more, and they spoke about it closer at the end of and we'll kind of almost talk about all of the rest of it in this section now. And they very much spoke about and I thought it was really kind of actually refreshing that they actually spoke about the Loyal 32.
Yep. They know it's there. They can't ignore it. They know it's there.
Of course, but to acknowledge it's there is very different from the know it. We know that they know stuff has been there for many, many years, but there's a very difference between knowing it's there and then acknowledging it's there. And the fact that they acknowledged it was there and that actually it's a way that both the players and they don't want the game to be played, I thought was very refreshing. So they talked about more CPs, which is I think is worrying because actually
no, I don't think it will. So
can be dangerous.
Now here's how it's going to start, right? Let's take a 2,000 point battle. You're going to get, let's say, I'm going to chuck a number out there. I'm going to say you're going to get 15 CP.
Yeah.
Right, or even 20 CP. Everyone gets the same amount of CP, and then how you spend that is up to you. So you'll probably find, like, to unlock another detachment. So if I want to bring in some Imperial Guard, that costs me 3 CP.
Yeah.
So suddenly, rather than me using the Imperial Guard to get me CP, I'm now using my CP to get them. And I've got to sit and work out whether I think they're going to add anything to my army. Rather than just having 32 guys because they gave me 5 CP and did nothing but sit in an objective, now I'm going to go, actually, my knights, am I going to get more play out of using my CP on the stuff I want to, which really turbocharges my army? And you're going to find straight away that changes the build. That nobody's going to bring Loyal 32 anymore, because what's the point, right? Unless it is to specifically sit on an objective, and even then, you can use a baby knight that does the same thing. So suddenly, I'm not gonna have all these little odds and ends, all these little bits that I bought just purely just to give me CP to drive the engine of my main army. We all got the same start point. I honestly just wrote awesome. I think it's a stunning idea. I think it's brilliant to see it, how it's going to work. But the fact that I'm no longer having to build armies out to try and, like my Chaos Space Marines, for example, I am so stratagem dependent when I play the game. I have to build in certain ways to just give me as much blinking CP as I can possibly get to try and drive. And I end up taking stuff I don't want purely so that the stuff I've got, which is good, has the engine to do it. Now I've got 20 CP and or 15 or whatever that number is. Brilliant. I can now work out what I want to do. So I just thought that was a stunning change, and it makes how I build an army totally different. And it's going to hopefully.
We don't like soup. We don't generally.
I actually hate soup, to be honest. I think unless it's a really cool army and it's themed, it just looks rubbish.
Yeah, and I'm happy to use it more often than you, but even I would rather not have it, and I much prefer the cohesive look of an army when it's all one thing. So the fact that that's been heard and that's being echoed in the new set of rules, I think is absolutely awesome. We'll have to see exactly how that unfolds, because I think if we are still restricted to a degree, because there still needs to be some restriction at somewhere, because some CPs, even some stratagems within codexes, are incredibly powerful. So I think there's a warning there, but look, it's really super cool, and I think that's a really positive move in the right direction. So that's good. So moving on to what I think will probably be the thing that excites you most, being a Astra Militarum player, is they talked about the changes of tanks, and what we'll also talk a little bit about is the also changes at the same time to blast, because I think they can pretty much be put in a similar bracket as far as Astra Militarum love.
I think that's got Lehman Rush written all over it. Yeah, I think it's
doesn't
awesome.
It just? So what do you think then? What do you think about those changes?
I think it's amazing, because what if, like many people, and this is something that Mike Brand and some others touched on, which is we want the game to feel more like an actual battle. So they touched on, and I don't want to jump ahead, but they touched on making the game, it's playable but more themed for everybody. So suddenly everything starts to work better. And tanks, it made no sense that I ran one grot in, which I couldn't even attack with, and I just made it so that your tank could no longer shoot. I used to just grind. It used to annoy me because it makes no sense. Why does my tank care about the little guy in front of him? I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm just going to drive over him. Right? Yeah. That's what's going to happen. It's not going to stop me shooting my guns. It never felt thematic. It always felt stupid. It was gamed. It was gamed to heck. I gamed it. The amount of times I would tag in a cultist onto a tank just to go, well, you can stay in combat or you can move away. It never felt right. But you obviously played the game. So now suddenly I think, all right, you put a grot there. I don't care. One, I'm just going to keep shooting anyway. And two, which is exactly how super heavies work. And how super heavies work was how I always felt all tanks should work. Right? Yeah. Why do I care if some little dude stood in front of me? Right? Unless if he's got a melter charge and he wants to put the melter charge on and blow me up, then fine. But I don't care because I can't presume that's going to happen. Even this is a real world context. I'm just going to drive over you. And I'm going to keep shooting the things I want to keep shooting at. And if you have got a big bomb and you blow me up, then fair enough. Such is life.
Absolutely. So if you missed this, guys, so basically what we're talking about, the fact is what they're going to change is the fact that you can't be held up anymore by being tagged when you've got a tank. So whereas before you would be able to, they'd stop you from shooting. And now you'll actually be able to shoot out of combat, which sounds really cool. So
and they did say, and you're not going to get trapped in combat either. So I think you're just going to be able to disengage. You're not going to care at all. Now, if I mob 30 plague bearers around you, you're not going to be able to go anywhere, which is no different from anything else, I would assume, unless you make you move your models because I'm driving my tank out, which is how it used to be. Yes. That was tank shock of old. Get out of my way.
I think there needs to be a difference between tanks with fly and tanks without fly, without it just being speed, because tanks are quite fast anyway. So I think there will be a difference, and there will be some way of penalising tanks that are on tracks, but that won't be.
Tanks on tracks are already slow, and
No,
Lehman Russ doesn't want to go. Yeah, but Lehman Russ doesn't want to go that fast anyway.
No,
he wants to shoot twice.
You're talking to a biased person with things with tracks. If they did had nothing extra, it would be massive nerf to tanks with fly, which I think is the tanks that they are ultimately trying to market more. So I don't see.
It's not a nerf, is it? They don't change. They can already do these
things. It isn't nerf. If something else becomes just as good for the same amount of points. So we'll see. Look, we'll argue about this on another chat. Otherwise, we'll be here all day. But yeah.
Yeah, I want to argue with you on a more sweary chat. So Tip of the Spearhead is a place for this.
You can talk nonsense on our podcast rather than here to the masses. And thank you again, everyone that's joined us. We've got almost 30 people that have been watching. Really, really appreciate you joining, and some cool little comments there. So thanks very much. So moving on, we talk about Blast, because obviously, as I said, another huge advantage to your Lehman Russ chassis, but also to some other cool stuff. What do you think about that change? Hopefully not Blast markers, right?
No, it won't be Blast markers. It'll just be, I imagine it will be, because the Demolisher's already got it, which is if you shoot at something with more than one models, you get X amount of extra hits. I think it'll just be that. So it'll be a case of if I shoot my Lehman Russ battle cannon at that unit of 30 orcs, the odds are I'm not going to miss, right? So I'm either going to get more shots, i.e. more damage from the explosion, which is all D6 or 2D6 or 3D6 or 4D shots is supposed to represent, isn't it? Just to represent more things getting hit. So it'll probably be double the number of shots if you're shooting at something with a lot of models, which makes loads of sense. I don't want to go back to Blast markers because it was just arguments.
Yes.
And it slowed the games down. No, it slowed the game down because you had those stupid little measuring things which were 1.9 inches, and you'd be there for hours with an orc player spacing things out. You'd be like, let's just play the game. So getting rid of that sped it all up.
Yeah,
right? And I get that. Yeah. It did remove some of the look of the game because suddenly you just had orc blobs or nid blobs and they were just piled in a big thing. But okay, I can abstractly remove that from the game. But let's not go back to measuring 1.9 bloody inches and spacing stuff out for hours because it's just boring.
And D6 shots and however many shots quite often is just too random. So hopefully this is a way of it making it more consistent to hit more stuff. If you're shooting a blast hard, if you're shooting something with a blast, it should hit a lot more stuff, So even if it takes slightly more of a hit from a strength point of view, which I'm not saying it will, it needs to. If you're taking something because you want to kill a lot of infantry, you want to kill a lot of troops, you generally want something that is is going to more guarantee you those hits. And at the moment, quite a lot of that stuff with the random amount of shots don't necessarily guarantee you the amount of stuff you need, right?
Yeah, and people go, oh, it's going to kill hordes. But I think the talk of strategic reserves that you're going to get to will change that again. But orcs could teleport whatever they wanted. I can't shoot what I can't see. So there's plenty of ways for a horde to have an advantage over my tanks. And then suddenly my tanks were just totally disadvantaged because when you actually got to me in combat, I couldn't even shoot you or do anything. So it was all on the horde. And my tanks, which were actually designed to sit in a row and blow everything up, suddenly became rubbish. And it never worked. Then I had to have screens. This should hopefully remove screens or to some extent screening. Because suddenly then I don't care if you attack me in combat. Okay, you might be able to charge me, but if I'm going to overwatch it, then bring it on. So I think it's hopefully going to shake it up a bit.
Yeah.
We can only tell by playing it, but already it gives people because tanks were dead exciting at the start of 8. They suddenly got more wounds. It couldn't die to a single shot. Everyone appeared, and then actually it turned out that las cannons killed them just as easy as before, and actually there was a lot of disadvantages. So why do I want to play them? And it kind of slowly disappeared again. And I think tanks
stop gashing around tanks. We've got to move on. Stop gashing around tanks.
Get the rest of it. I love tanks. Next,
I know you love tanks.
The next thing.
So terrain, and this again, we did a whole podcast around things we wanted to see changed, and it's funny that some of this has actually come up within that because I think we even spoke about the tanks bit in there. But anyway,
we did.
Terrain change is obviously one of the big things that any competitive player has really prayed for since the beginning of the 8th edition, because our terrain set of rules at the moment is pretty poor. Now, they didn't give us a huge amount of detail around exactly what is changing. We know for certain there is an additional layer, so that does mean, you know, you've got a bit more rules to learn around terrain, but it definitely sounds that having terrain is going to be more of a feature in your games. And somebody particularly like you, Simon, and, you know, again, I don't want you to gush forever about this, but you love terrain. You absolutely, terrain floats your boat more than most things, and you pride your tournaments on terrain. So how do you feel about having terrain actually is now going to be much more a part of the game?
Yeah, well, obviously, brilliant. I've talked about it before, but
Yeah.
what they did say, and it picked up on it, they said what one of the things that, and they acknowledged that they oversimplified terrain,
Yeah,
which is exactly what they did.
yeah.
They made terrain very
Too good or too bad?
well. It was just all it ever did really was give +1 cover save and
Block,
stop things from moving around it. And it never felt themic, never felt much. How can a tank, which you can only see 1 centimeter of, have no benefit but now I have to touch terrain to get the benefit, but it doesn't have to be the terrain which you can't see me through. It can be any terrain. It just nothing interacted well, and it led to really stupid, you know, you were playing things in a stupid way. Like I would tag a bit of terrain with my tank purely so that the big rock in front of me gave me some cover. Why am I doing that? It doesn't make any sense. I'm only doing that because the game's making me do that. Remove that. If that big bit of terrain is blocking line of sight to me, or it's making it very hard to see me, then give me some sort of cover. Make it interactive. And I hope that's what they've really done. And I know for a fact that everybody from, you're chatting to Reese and LVO, terrain is one of the things they want to make much cooler because it makes the game more fun and it incentivizes people to make cool terrain as well. You go cardboard boxes and a couple of shoe boxes is all well and good, but it doesn't look good. We want cool looking terrain,
Yeah, built with the fluff. So I think it's a great. So that's awesome. And the fact that, again, that they've listened to what we've moaned about, they've listened to one of the biggest, gripes. Then I think that's awesome. So fingers crossed that will work out well, and it will really add something to the flavour of games. So then they talked about scaling, which was an interesting one. Again, pretty small amount of information there, but I think this may be to do with the times that it's taking for people to play games. They talked about that they've designed the game now so it will scale at every level well. So I didn't take much out of this. What did you take from this?
It's just fairly straightforward, isn't it? But back in the day, you try and if you wanted a quick game of 40k, you go 1,000 points, 500 points, which is fine. But if they then bring orcs, it's still slow because 500 points of orcs is still quite a lot, right? So and it's still much. So I think now if they're going to talk about scaling, they might talk in terms of if you play 500 points, it will maybe decrease the unit sizes or something like that. Scaling to me means you go up or you go down, right? And it's not just in points, it's in maybe unit sizes, what units you can take, what you can do. And it will just make it easier for us as players to play over games. We don't always want to play a 2,000 point game, right? If I go to the club and I've only got an hour and a half, we can just have an hour and a half game and I don't have to spend 9 hours the previous day negotiating on which armies we're going to take. Do you think you'll get that in an hour and a half? I'm not sure I will. Now it's just like, let's just play scale B or whatever they're going to do. Scale A to E. E is big, A is small. Let's play B. Brilliant. The app should hopefully have it all in, and that's going to tie all this together, right? The app.
Yeah, fingers
Then I
crossed.
can just go. I just want a game of B. This is my army. Let's play, and hopefully it'll scale that way. So we'll see. I didn't take an awful lot more than that, other than it just sounds like they've been a bit more intuitive, which is good.
Absolutely. And then the last thing, which I think will be good, because I think that there's two ways of reading this. At first, I put flyers OP, but then when I listened, I actually could see much more of a undertone of reducing the effectiveness of flyers. From actually listening to the guys.
I don't think it's going to reduce it. I think it's going to change it. So
I think
what I took from that is no longer am I going to get that stupid scenario where a load of Eldar flyers block me in. And they tried to change that, but it was still happening because it happened to me after it happened, where I suddenly can't do anything. So it's going to make a plane in the sky be in the sky, which I think is amazing. The base is just purely there to hold the model up, right? And that's the way it should be. Why is a little bit of infantry? And also the flip side of that, if I'm clever and I park 30 plague bearers in your flight path, suddenly you blow up. It makes no sense.
Yeah.
What? It's a plane. I'm going to fly off the battlefield, do a loop, and come back round and shoot you. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So suddenly, it's. I don't think it's planes OP. I just think it's planes working as they were intended, which
Yeah.
is as a plane. You know.
And what we've also got to take into account with this is obviously there will be a bedding in time, but if different units will eventually gain different points increases, and also force organizations will change and stuff like that. So what this is ultimately trying to do is make a unit within the battlefield operate like it should do more than anything, and then after we've got that, we can then tweak with the power level and how it operates. And I think that's ultimately the good thing, because like you say, you've got a mechanic within the game that makes things really gamey and plays in a horrible way, which is what flyers currently do. That's the problem more than the strength of the unit, right?
100%. Yeah. That plane's a plane, right? You can shoot it down, you can do other things. But that's not how planes were being used.
Yeah.
Planes were being used in gamey ways, and they touched on it, and I can't remember which point you touched on it, but they said the rule set, they put a lot more examples in so that you can gain their intent, which I thought was massive.
Yes.
Because for me, how many arguments happen on this bloody internet because Rye versus Raw, right? All the blinking time. Well, you don't know that's what they intended. Right? And you've said that before to me. Well, do you know that's what they intended? Well, now there's hopefully going to be a lot more examples of this is what we intended. And as a TO, I'll be able to go, what are you doing? Right? You know that's not how it was intended to be. Don't argue with me about the English of it. Well, they said the instead of there, right? No, right? That's not what they intended. The example doesn't say that. Stop it. Carry on. Because you're always going to get people that want to game it. That's the competitive world we live in. It's just the nature of it. I don't think it's well, it is intentional. And I'm not saying they're cheating. They're going to the letter of the law they can go to.
Yeah.
Right. And it always frustrates you when you play something like that, because you think, oh God, really? They park five flies in front of you, and you go, and they're just sitting there with a little grin, going, no, what are you going to do? And you think, oh, just play the game.
Definitely. So that's all good. And they actually said there was more effort that went into the actual writing of the rules as well, with the wording as well as the intention. So I think hopefully with that as a package, they might well have. And the thing is, because they're not changing huge dramatic, they might be changing some fundamentals, but the rule set in itself is built on an existing rule set. It does give them the opportunity to hopefully get closer to a place. And look guys, let's not be stupid here. We know that I'm going to put my hand up first of all and say that I went through a really tough time at the beginning of 8th edition, where I expected 8th edition to be the absolute saviour of Warhammer 40k, and brought whatever nids I liked out of the cupboard, put them on the battlefield, and went, well, everything's good now, and learned very quickly that that's not the case, and that won't be the case now. This will not be perfect. There will be issues, there will be problems, there will be stuff that's OP. That's the way this game is always going to be. But look, if we're moving in the right direction, that's a good thing, right?
Yeah, 8th edition was a massive change to 7th, and I said right at the start, this is an experiment, right? This is actually this is 8th. The 8th edition, we're just playtesting this, and I said that right at the very beginning of it. As and when codex were dropping, they were watching, they were gauging, they were seeing what happened, they were seeing what builds came out, they were seeing how rules interacted. Stuff they didn't like, they changed. Stuff that they got wrong, they changed, and we ended up with far more kind of bloody FAQs than we did rules, right? Because as they did stuff as the interactions, so now all the books are out, and there's some argument to say, why didn't you just release all the books at the same time, and then we know where we're at, because all that's happening is we're finding new interactions as we're going, but they're all out now, so hopefully they can look at it and go, these are all the things we didn't like, or how players didn't like, because a lot of the things I complain about is because it doesn't make any sense. It's why would that happen? Why would my blinking tank get stuck? Why would my plane crash when it flies out? And I think Eddie Eccles said it's like there's a huge 6 foot by 4 foot force field.
Yeah,
just crash into it and blow up. It makes no sense. Right? Planes don't work that way. Right? A Spitfire didn't fly over the battlefield and have to go refuel. It would have a couple of passes, before it would have to do that. It's just pointless. It's stupid. And planes are very maneuverable. Right? That's the whole point of them. So some of these things didn't make any sense, and were being used in ways that it wasn't intended. And then suddenly, so I like this. I like the fact that they've spotted it, they're seeing it, they're doing something about it. And that's the next one. I think the next one you're going to tell me is bang on point for that.
What? No, I've got nothing else.
You didn't write down strategic reserves? I
Oh,
thought that was
actually,
huge.
I did actually. You know, you're right. I'm glad you
Because that
mentioned that. I would have completely passed that around, but yeah, that so yeah. So the kind of I think the final one was around how we're going to work with reserves, because at the moment, and this very much goes along the line of how do you input something that stops things from being very alpha strike, because we have a big issue in the game. Generally, whoever goes first, if you've got the right kind of build, you're going to smash someone off the table straight away. And if you can be, you could potentially go too far the other way and make things, as we're seeing potentially the starts of things in the ITC with like armies like Gene Stealer Cult and armies that can be very, very clever at going second. If you've got much more of a strategic ability to be able to manipulate your reserve role, you're playing much more of a card game with that element of the game. So the way to the kind of talking about making it so you've got different ways to bring in tactical reserves and different units that aren't necessarily historically units that come in from reserve is definitely a whole new layer of the game, right? And definitely an exciting factor.
Yeah, and I think again I had the same thing you was like, oh god, I remember 8th when you could put half your army up in the sky, dump it on the floor on turn 2 and wipe someone out, and there was nothing I could do about it.
Yeah.
I knew it was coming. There's nothing I can do. I can't wipe your army out before that happens. I know how this ends. It's going to be fun, and that's when people started to bring screens in. So suddenly you ended up with disposable guardsmen, disposable grots, and you ended up with very odd looking battlefields. We just get rings, and
And
it doesn't.
they never got it
No,
right. Ultimately,
they never got it right.
So either they killed combat too much, or they made screens make armies look ugly, or they made things too beta strike, or the alpha strike was too horrendous, because the core restrictions within units and within the game meant that you'd always come to one of those blockers. And this hopefully gives every army much more of a tactical flexibility, right? In a nutshell.
Hope so. I really hope so.
Fingers crossed. So I only have really the last pointer part to talk about, which is very much the final outing. But before we go into that, were there anything in your notes that we wanted to just chat about that I'd missed as far as kind of big takeaways from the review?
What I did write something down, and it had me laughing the whole way through. What I really love is how Games Workshop now interacts with us, the customers. And what it effectively does is you had behind Pete Foley, you had the Plastic Thunderhawk. He had things to do today. Plastic Thunderhawk, rules for Angron, confirmed Dark Angels are the best. I just couldn't stop laughing every time I saw it, because it was just on the backboard and the whiteboard, and it was absolutely spot on. And so I really loved my only note was they've delivered this at a really cool level.
Yeah, I think it was a really good, and I think I'll be really honest. I thought the 3 previews up to this point have been really pretty poor, pretty lame duck. They've been really stop start, and I've really struggled to kind of find them engaging. And obviously that's because they need, and it's fair because they need to show stuff throughout every game system, and not every game system is going to suit everybody. But I felt that this was on point. They really did kind of deliver this. There wasn't any massive, there was one very, very small break, but other than that, it was like a constant conveyor belt. They didn't derail it with anything particularly. I don't think they kid gloved us too much. They told us as much information as they physically could. So I thought it was generally delivered really, really well. But before we end this video, and we are pretty much going to be bang on an hour, I think, let's talk about the final kind of reveal.
What the Silent King.
Jesus. Now my internet cut off, so I need to have a better look at this guy as I was halfway watching him.
So I think so. I predicted a big base model, and I think it is. It looks like a kind of a walking throne with what is effectively a big green kind of like that. Looks like the Silent King. I think that's the Silent King, or a remnant of the Silent King.
That's got to be the Silent King. That's got to be.
He is like, because he was a god, right? Or he was godlike, and
he was godlike.
A very sort of Satan kind of captured Satan kind of screaming thing going on. It just screamed. They've dug something up they shouldn't have. That was Prince Imhotep, wasn't it? They've captured him, and it's like, here he is walking onto the battlefield, and they're going, kill that, and he's just going to go, blow it up.
it looks like he
That'd
had
be awesome.
a shard of a Catan on his base, which just sounds amazing. So yeah, he is, and that's
Well,
100%.
that's what it was. It looked like a portal thing with a big bright green guy, and he's got to be the Silent King. The
Yeah,
big
that's
bright green guy is this. He's obviously a shard of it or a bit of it.
no. So no. So the Silent King is just he's not he's a Necron. He's just the OG old Necron guy.
Oh,
But
so
it
do you reckon
like
he's the actual guy on the base then, and he's
he,
captured some sort of awesome?
exactly. So
okay.
in the fluff, his big thing is that the war in the heavens was him sending the Necrons to fight the Catan, and it looks like there's a shard of a Catan on the base.
Oh
And
yeah,
that's what
yeah.
those people,
There is a crazy, and that crazy big green thing will be a bit of Catan then. Okay,
bit of a
that's cool.
Catan that he's captured. Yeah.
Okay. There you go.
Yeah. That's what people are
So,
saying.
so Silent King is going to be like just the dude on that big walking thing, and he's got
like the
like
emperor.
some.
He's like the emperor to Necrons. He basically
Yeah. Well, he's a big king, right? He's King Tutankhamun, isn't he? He's the big guy.
he is the big guy. He is the big guy. So excited, and I think look, there's no doubt about it. Necrons are going to get some serious love. So fingers crossed. I'm
just watching this again now. It's a 34-second video, so bear with me. Right? I'm just watching it again.
Just watch
there's
it.
a 140k. So there we go. Right, so here it comes out. So you get some cables. There's the feet from what looks like a big stalker. Then you've got, obviously, it's got a really cool kind of metallic looking cloak. There he is, just dude stood in the middle. He's got hands gesturing. He's got an awesome cloak thing going on, and then he's got a big war scythe, and then you've got that big green screaming thing. So that's gonna. I thought that was a Silent King. That's my bad. That's just going to be a obviously a
shard of
thing.
Shard of a Catan. Yeah.
That's cool. But he is. Where is that dude then? So he's got. I think I was right with the big base. I think I've nailed that. I think this is a big base model.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Cool. Awesome. Let's have it. Let's bring it
on.
Yeah.
So awesome. So I think all in all, I pretty much I'm on the same hype train as you. I think that was an awesome preview. Everything that they've leaked and told us about, I think is all positives. It's not going to be perfect, and no doubt there'll be some rocks in the way, but all in all, really, really good. I think they knocked it out of the park. I can't wait for 9th. Exciting times ahead. They've got a Q&A on Tuesday. We'll probably do something off the back of that. But and if you like listening to us rabbit, then make sure you do check Tip of the Spearhead out. There's loads and loads of past podcasts on there, and we started putting them up on YouTube as well. They're a little bit more risque and a little bit more than this show.
I think the phrase you're after is not safe for work.
Not safe for work. Definitely the thing. But anyway, we've nattered enough. Thanks very much to everybody that's joined us in the chat. We've had loads of people dropping in, loads of people commenting. Thank you so much, guys. Please do make sure you like this video, subscribe to YouTube, like us on Facebook. If you want to support us further, you can go over to Patreon. But have a great day, guys. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again soon. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.